After a short delay, we finally have the Battlefield 2042 beta. So today we're going to be going through the best settings to get the game running at its max performance and allowing you to dominate your enemies. Hey everyone, it's FourEyes or Dave, and welcome back to another video. Today we finally have the Battlefield 2042 beta. I've got access to the kind of early access build through pre-order. If a lot of you guys have done the same, then I'm hoping that we'll meet each other on the battlefield. I've played a couple of games so far, and the game is running pretty decently. There's a couple of performance issues, but the main point of today's video is to cover through all of the settings in the game that I believe are most important to get the game running at its best, looking its best, and also just helping you out with some of those extra gameplay tweaks that will allow you to improve your gameplay overall. So let's jump in straight away to the general tab of the options. Now, there isn't really anything I've changed in here. The only one which kind of really intrigued me was in this network area. There's an aim lead indicator. The fact that it's in the network area makes me believe that there's some sort of a thing that they've got in place where if you've got higher ping, it almost indicates to you where you need to shoot in order for your bullets to still register. If that's the case, then I think that's really cool, and I'm just going to keep this on and test it out as I play. I don't have any problems with my network, so it might not be anything which really comes into play for me, but I think it's an interesting thing to see a game bringing in potentially a really interesting thing for those people who don't have the best internet connections. So I would recommend you just keep this on, but as I said, I've kept everything else in the general area the same. Next, into the display area, which is probably what most of you guys have come in here for. As I mentioned at the start of the video, there is a little bit of performance issues at the moment. I'm running with a RTX 3070, and I'm getting around 100 FPS on 1080p, and that works okay for me. I think that the performance will definitely increase as we go, potentially even just through the beta, but then also as the actual game releases as well. So you've got to take this with a pinch of salt at the moment, but these are the settings I've got that have improved the game the most for me. So going through this, full screen mode, make sure this is set to full screen. I say this in every single one of my settings videos. If you have this set to full screen, it means that your game is basically getting all the resources when it's open. If you have this set to borderless, it will allow you to alt-tab out the game quicker, which is nice, but your PC is essentially rendering in stuff in the background, which is going to be using up resources and also increasing your input latency. The full screen device, you'll know that this is set correctly because it will be on the correct monitor. So for me, I've got it on my 240Hz 1080p monitor. Full screen resolution, just set this to your native resolution. For me, it's 1080p, and then refresh rate, jack this up to whatever the refresh rate of your monitor is. Mine is 240Hz, yours might be 144Hz. Whatever it is, set that here. Next up, the field of view. So this is vertical field of view. A lot of people will probably look at this and wonder, why does this only go to 100? I like to set my field of view to something like 120 or 110. All you have to do is take that number, which is your horizontal field of view from whatever game you play, potentially something like Warzone or COD or Apex, and you just need to put it into a calculator online and find out what the vertical field of view is. For me, I play at 110 FOV usually, and therefore 78 FOV works for me. And then I put my vehicle third-person field of view at the same. Maybe I'll change this depending on how it's like driving vehicles. I haven't done a huge amount of vehicle gameplay yet, so we will figure that out as we play. ADS field of view. This is going to be kind of personal preference. What this does is basically, if you've got this set to off, then when you zoom in, your zoom will go really far in. Whereas if you've got this set to on and you've increased your FOV, so you're zoomed out a bit more, that slightly zoomed out view is maintained when you zoom in. I like this. This is basically independent versus affected FOV from Warzone, if you guys have played Warzone. And what it means is that your visual recoil reduces dramatically because you're not zoomed in as much. You don't really feel the recoil as much. It almost feels like you're just removing recoil from the game. What this will affect, though, is if you're trying to shoot people at longer distances, because you're not zoomed in as much, it can kind of become harder to get used to. But I would recommend putting this to on so that you gain that increased FOV even when you're zoomed in with a one-time scope, and you maintain just just better gameplay overall and less visual recoil. Graphic settings. Brightness, this is going to be personal preference once again. I've just left it at default, which is 50, and that's been fine for me. But if you find the game is too dark or too bright, well, first of all, try and play with your monitor settings. But otherwise, come in here and play around with this. High dynamic range, or HDR. I don't have a HDR monitor, so this is completely pointless for me. But if you do have a HDR monitor, or you're playing on a TV or something and you want to get HDR going, then you can enable it here. So the next 5 options: motion blur, chromatic aberration, film grain, vignette, and lens distortion. These are definitely all things that you want off, or to 0 in the case of motion blur, because these are just these additional immersive effects that the game allows you to put on, but it will ruin your gameplay if you're turning around and it's blurry. If you've got film grain all over your screen, it's just not going to improve your gameplay whatsoever, so make sure you come in and turn these off. Next up, we've got the graphics options, the main graphics options. I recommend that you start off by putting graphics quality to custom, therefore you can come in and customize all of this stuff in here. Texture quality and texture filtering, I've currently got these on high. I would recommend that you play around with these and see what you can cope with. This is really going to come down to the VRAM of your card. I've got an 8 gig 3070, so I can get away with running these a little bit higher and getting a slightly better looking game in terms of just my textures, because textures looking muddy really kind of ruins the game's look in many cases. If you need to get FPS though, if you just want that FPS boost, then honestly just put these on low, and then I'd recommend putting everything else on low. I try to not go into these settings videos and just say put everything on low, because a lot of the time that's not actually the best thing to do, because a lot of these don't affect your FPS that much. Whereas in a game that's really as heavy as Battlefield 2042 at the moment, putting everything to low is going to improve FPS. So I would recommend doing it. If you have that extra bandwidth in terms of VRAM, maybe put the texture quality up to medium or high and see how it fares for you. Lastly, at the bottom, we've got the little advanced settings area. Dynamic resolution scale, keep this off. This will deliver a more consistent frame rate at the cost of resolution. This basically means that if you start dipping frame rate, it will bring down the resolution from 1080p to something lower, maybe down to like 720p, to keep the FPS high. This is probably a setting which will be quite useful if you've got a lower end PC. Although I'd recommend that if you're going to do that, just go and turn the resolution down rather than setting this setting. NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency, put this to enabled plus boost. NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency has been implemented in so many games now, and it really, really helps that PC responsiveness and latency just overall, so definitely turn it on if you've got that NVIDIA card. Future frame rendering, 100% keep this on. A lot of people will look at this and say, when set to on, if you look through it says, it increases input lag, which is typically just like a big no, but I read into how this worked in Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1, I believe it was also in, and this improves FPS so much because any little CPU hitch that you have won't affect your FPS too bad because it's already pre-buffered those future frames. Yes, it does increase input lag a tiny amount, but the FPS boost you get is more than worth it. So definitely keep this on. Don't be turning this off because you think it's going to help you out. You'll lose a lot of FPS from it. Vertical sync, definitely off. And then high fidelity object to mount. I'm actually going to turn this to low. I thought I had set it to low, but it increases or decreases the amount of soldiers and vehicles that can be seen. I would just keep this on low at the moment. This is likely to be something which is going to affect FPS in the long run, especially in the beta. So yeah, keep that on low. HUD general, the only thing I think I've changed in here is the camera shake amount. I wouldn't put it to 0 because I like to have slight bit of immersion. You know, when a rocket flies in and almost blows you up, I like to have a bit of camera shake. If you want to go for pure gameplay, turn it to 0, but personal preference for me, put it at 50. It's lower than the 100%, so I can actually still see when I'm fighting someone, but kind of put it at an average in the middle. Colorblind, I put it to deuteranopia because that's my colorblindness, red-green colorblind. And then there's nothing else in here. Crosshair, this is going to be personal preference, really. I've just kept it at default for now, but I'm going to play around with crosshairs at some point in the future. Minimap, I haven't changed this either. I like having it rotate with my view, so I can always kind of see ahead of me on the minimap. Potentially there's a change to the opacity that will help, but I've left it at default for now. And HUD icons, I've just kept these all at 100% so that I can see what I need to see in terms of, oh, this is a friendly, this is an enemy, here's the objective. I don't know the maps that well yet, so I need to keep all these kind of things on so I know where I'm going. Sound, let's kind of get through these last few ones because there isn't too much to touch on here. Sound, master volume, keep this at 100% unless you want to turn it down, but I'd recommend just turning it down from your headset or from your volume on Windows. You don't really need to change it in here. Music, this is personal preference. I usually put this on 0 actually, so I'll turn this off because sometimes I end up sitting in menus a long time and music just kind of starts blaring in my ears. Sound effects volume and in-game announcer volume I've also got set to 100. Audio mix, I need to kind of test these out and see what works best. We've got a lot of different settings here. I've gone for 3D headphones at the moment. I've got good stereo studio headphones, Sennheiser headphones. So the 3D mix that apparently allows you to perceive the position of sounds better, I'm assuming that's going to be pretty good for a good set of headphones like these. Audio in background, I've just kept this off so that when I alt tab out, I don't hear anything. And then hit indicator, I've got this set to the default Battlefield 2042 style. Maybe I'll try and change these to the kind of old style or whatever, but I'm going to keep them at default for now. Voice chat, nothing that I'm going to change in here. I've got it off at the moment, but maybe I'll turn it on when I get good enough to start trash talking people. Controller doesn't affect me because I don't play on controller. Mouse and keyboard in global, make sure mouse raw input's on for sure. It's on by default, but there's literally no point to have this off. And invert vertical look definitely off. Not something that I would want to use. On foot, this is kind of a big section which I've been playing around with a lot. I'll try and get through this fairly quickly. Soldier mouse aim sensitivity. You just need to try and convert this from another game that you've played. For me, 11 matches up with what I've used in other games, but I need to wait till this game appears on mousesensitivity.com, which is what I use to transfer my sensitivities from game to game. But for now, this feels about right for me in terms of my centimeters per 360. Invert look, we've already said this one. Field of view, we've already covered. ADS field of view, we've already covered. Soldier sprint, I prefer to have on hold rather than toggle, so I get more control of when I'm sprinting and when I'm not. If you put it to toggle, it might be easier on your little finger, but you'd get less control of when you're sprinting and when you're not. Double tap forward to sprint, not something which I would recommend having on. Just keep it to being on shift, where it says here, sprint keybind. Sprint to vault over, I would recommend you keep this off so you don't end up accidentally vaulting things when you're just running around. And always use traversal sprints. This is a new thing in the game, kind of similar to Warzone or Modern Warfare 2019, where if you double tap sprint, you run quicker. It's basically, so it's like the tactical sprint from that game. I would recommend that you keep this off so that you can control when you're using traversal sprint and when you're using normal sprint. It will mean you're having to spam shift more, but you get more control, and that's better for gameplay. Soldier weapon zoom, definitely on hold, unless you like to play on toggle, but I'd recommend against it. Steady scope, this is whether you hold or you press to toggle steady scope or not. Once again, I like to have it on hold when I'm sniping. And soldier zoom aim sensitivity, I thought I would have to set this to 100 because it would be like 100%. I found that to get a 1-to-1 aim, and I'll run through the settings quickly to show you this, to get a 1-to-1 aim between my ADS sensitivity with the 1 times and when just running around on foot hip firing, putting this at about 35 seems to work. I'm going to need to try this out and test it a bit more, but 35 seems to be working pretty well for me at the moment, and it feels very much 1-to-1. Parachute auto-deploy off, airspawn parachute auto-deploy off, quick throw grenades off, and reload hints I've got on still because maybe I'm not used to the UI yet, so I need to know when I need to reload so I don't end up trying to shoot someone with no bullets in my gun. Advanced vertical mouse aim ratio, definitely put this to 100%. We don't want our vertical mouse aim to be different from our horizontal. That's going to feel horrible. Same with the zoom aim ratio, put these both to 100. Uniform soldier aiming and the coefficient for that I need to test with, but right now I've kept this off, and it's meaning that I'm getting that 1-to-1 mouse sensitivity with the soldier zoom aim sensitivity that I talked about earlier. There's a lot of different zoom aim sensitivity things in this, and I need to try them all out, but right now this is what feels natural for me. Zoom transition sensitivity, I've kept this to off, and then the zoom aim sensitivities from 1 times to 10 times, I've just shoved them all on 100% for now. Maybe some of these higher time zooms I'll turn down when I start using them, but definitely for these low ones, like 1 times to around, I guess, maybe 2.5 times, you want this on 100% so you get 1-to-1 mouse sensitivity. Your muscle memory doesn't get ruined when you start ADSing. Vehicles, you can change your mouse sensitivity in here. I actually like to have this a little bit higher on the vehicles because in the vehicles typically I'm not trying to actually aim per se. I'm more just like trying to trying to look around and see what's around me. Also, I think that the actual mouse sensitivity of the vehicles is lower by natural, so having this higher will get you more of a one-to-one feel between being on foot and being in a vehicle. Everything else in here we've kind of already touched on. Gunner aim sensitivity, I'll need to play around with this, but currently it's set to the default value. And there's nothing else in here that I would touch at the moment. Accessibility, this is where you've got, once again, the color blinds, things like motion blur. So this has kind of already been covered. You can turn on and off vibration on your controller from here if you use a controller. Controls, we've already covered through these in other settings. And then keybinds, I'm not going to cover in this video because I think it's completely personal preference to you. It's not up to me to tell you, use this keybind or use this. If you don't like a keybind that the game gives you to start off with, change it, because you can come in here and change them all. So maybe down the line there'll be some ones that I don't like, but for now everything feels natural. It feels like normal Battlefield to me, so I don't need to change anything. And there we go, guys. That is all the settings currently in the game. We don't know if there's going to be more settings added, potentially, when the actual full game releases, but for the beta right now, this is what I believe to be the best settings to get you performing at your best. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you smash that like button down below and subscribe for more Battlefield 2042 videos, hopefully coming very soon. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in my next one. Bye-bye.